so the Golden State Warriors receive Andre Drummond. The Detroit Pistons receive D'Angelo Russell and Kevon Looney or Willie Cauley-Stein, whoever is performing the worst of the two. The Warriors get one of the best rebounders of all time to rebound misses from three. Imagine a Warriors team where after Curry misses a three-pointer, you have to stop Andre Drummond from rebounding to the miss. And as for the Pistons, they will get an all-star guard who can create offense way better than Reggie Jackson's garbage ass, and a replacement big with Looney or Stein. Alright, this is going to be a long video, so I'm going to just try and speed through this intro as fast as possible, but real quick, this list is not going to have any future projections in it. This is basically just a list of the top 100 players leaving the 2018-19 season going into this season. Nobody that I think will be better this year will get a boost because of that, and also players that are not going to be playing this season, basically Kevin Durant and John Wall, will not be on this list. Players who are going to be injured for a little bit will make the list, and it will not be a knock against them. And there are also no rookies on this list. This is going to be a 3-part video, so make sure to like and subscribe for the other 2 parts. And with that, let's roll the intro.
Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
Real quick before we start, I want to shout out the new episode of the Hoopscast. Me, Mojo, and a special guest did a episode on some potential trades for the upcoming season. It was really fun with a lot of really interesting trades in there, so please go give that a watch. With that said, number 100 is Fred VanVleet. Fred just had a phenomenal playoffs after his kid was born. He is one of the best shooters in the game, off of the catch and off of the dribble. He is also a capable shot creator and playmaker, and in a bigger role for Toronto this year. I expect him to average around 15 to 17 points per game, probably not on the greatest efficiency in the world, but still. And number 99, we have Bobby Portis. Bobby, I feel, is very underrated as a scorer. I really hated to see him go when the Bulls traded him. He was honestly my second favorite player on the team, but he can get you a solid 14-7 with good shooting from all over the court, and he's a good energy guy as well. Number 98 is Ricky Rubio. Ricky is one of the best playmakers in the NBA, though he doesn't force it. He isn't one to try and pad his assist numbers. He is also a capable scorer. He can finish inside, and his mid-range pull-up game is very good. His 3-ball is less than desirable, but he is a solid defender. And 97, we have Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose broke out last year and looked like a legitimate NBA player again, and became one of the best 6-man in the game, putting up 17 points a game, and he also had a phenomenal 3-point shot. My only fear is that that season was a bit of a fluke, especially his shooting, but hopefully he will not have that problem. I expect him to contribute really well for the Pistons this year. At number 96, Danny Green. Green is the perfect example of plug and play. He had a sometimes patchy playoffs this year for Toronto, but overall, he provided good shooting and good defense, and that is pretty much the essence of Danny Green. The Lakers overpaid him, but he should fit in well with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Number 95, Joe Harris. Joe is one of the 5 best shooters in the NBA, and that is no hyperbole. I would say he is pretty much only behind 2 shooters in Golden State and Buddy Hield. He shot 47% from 3 on 5.1 attempts a game, averaging 14 points last season. He was one of the main reasons that the Brooklyn Nets were a surprise team last year. Number 94, Justice Winslow. Justice had a breakout season last year after being utilized as a main ball handler and distributor. For most of his career, Winslow was a really good defensive player with almost no offensive abilities outside of just hitting an open layup or throwing down an alley-oop, but with the ball in his hands last year, he was able to average 12, 5, and 4, shooting 38% from 3 on 3.5 attempts. Great defense with some playmaking and scoring ability. Number 93 is Colin Sexton. Sexton had a great rookie year, averaging 17 points, and he shot a surprising 40% from 3. His playmaking needs some work, but he has already established himself as a really good scoring guard. Number Number 92 is Marcus Smart, who is another phenomenal role player. Marcus finally had a season where he shot well from 3. He shot 36% on 4 attempts a game. He also got 4 assists a game and played great defense as per usual. He's also a great hustle guy, and he is the guy that every team should want. He does all the little things. And speaking of doing all the little things, number 91 is Thaddeus Young. Thad does exactly that. He is a good defender. He can take it off of the dribble as a power forward. He can kind of shoot. It's not the ideal shot you want for your offense, but at least during the regular season, he can't be left open. And most importantly, he is a great teammate. He has been credited as the reason that the Pacers did not fall apart after Oladipo went down with his season-ending injury. He is a great locker room presence, and his impact goes well beyond his stats. Number 90 is Marcus Morris. Morris is solid defensively, and offensively he is a really good stretch 4, shooting 38% from 3 on 5.5 attempts per game last year, and he is also a solid one-on-one scorer with a good face-up game. He is a rare role player that also has some creating ability. Number 89, Patrick Beverley. Another great 3-and-D guy and a good teammate and presence on the court. He has a little bit of a crazy streak, whether it be real or manufactured, and it can give his team momentum and sometimes intimidate the opponent. Number 88 is Eric Bledsoe. Some of y'all might feel that this is too low, but I personally have a very low opinion of Eric Bledsoe. He seems to me like wasted potential. He's a good defender and slasher, but a really bad shooter, not much as a playmaker, and he completely falls apart in the playoffs. He is basically like Lonzo Ball with just more touches, and that's probably a giveaway that Lonzo doesn't make an appearance on this list. Number 87, Bam Adebayo. Bam has finally been given an opportunity to start with Hassan Whiteside being traded this year. He is everything you want out of a modern center on defense. Shot blocking, switchability, enough size to handle bigs in the post, but not so much that he is slow-footed. And on offense, he is a consistent lob target, good rebounder, gets 3 offensive rebounds a game, and apparently he has worked on his shooting, which showed a small amount of promise. So there is a real chance that he is way higher on this list than he is currently for me, because he is in the conversation for most improved player for the upcoming year. At number 96, Kyle Kuzma. Once again, this is probably going to be controversial. I made a whole video on this, so I don't feel like going too deep into it. Basically, Kuz is an 18 point per game scorer on okay efficiency overall, bad shooting efficiency, and he is bad or adequate at most things outside of that. Some okay scoring with bad everything else is the 86th best player in the NBA in my opinion. He's basically like Andrew Wiggins if Wiggins wasn't a ball stopper and played mostly off ball, if that makes any sense. Number 85 is Serge Ibaka. Serge is a really good defensive role player. He is both a good shot blocker and very switchable, and on offense his 3-point shot has completely fallen off. Hopefully it comes back. But I recall his mid-range game being really good in the playoffs. It seemed like anytime he was open, he nailed it. And he's a good roll man, and he can occasionally post up. Number 84 is Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas, for the first time in his career, was finally embraced for what he is in Memphis. It's a small sample size, but he put up 20 and 11 in 19 games in Memphis, and he has a lot of potential as a 6-man in the future for the Grizzlies. Good rebounder, post scorer, can hit an open mid-range shot and sometimes an open 3. Number 83 is Jarrett Allen. He's a really good shot blocker and a bright young big man, a good rebounder, good athlete, and has shown some potential as a shooter. Harrison Barnes comes in at number 82. He is kind of like a better version of Marcus Morris, but at small forward, good 3-and-D guy with some creating ability. Barnes is a good bit better of a creator than Morris. He has a solid mid-range game, he can post up, and he's a pretty solid ball handler. At number 81, DeAndre Jordan has fallen off pretty significantly, but he is still the same guy that he has always been, just not quite at the same level. Rebounding, defense, overrated defense, but defense, and of course he is a lob target. Number 80 is TJ Warren. Ironically enough, he is pretty similar to Kyle Kuzma. He is a scorer and not much else, but unlike Kuz for last season, TJ is a pretty good shooter. He shot 43% from 3 on 4.5 attempts a game, so with that simple difference, he gets a few spots ahead of Kuz. Number 79, Spencer Dinwiddie. He's one of the best 6 men in the game, really good scorer, also really clutch. He can score in a myriad of ways. He is also a solid playmaker, playmaker, and with his size, he can play both guard positions. Number 78 is Derek White, who really bursted onto the scenes in the latter half of the season, and in the playoffs, but he pretty much is the definition of all around. There are not a lot of things that he can't do as a point guard: good defender, playmaker, shooter, shot creator, damn good teammate, and leader. Number 77 is Josh Richardson, who finally gets to show off his skills on the big stage in Philly. Good 3-and-D 2 guard with some creating ability. He averaged 16 a game with Miami last year. I don't expect quite that much production in Philly, but his shooting split should improve. 76 is Derek Favors. Derek kind of got screwed over when Rudy Gobert became a really good player, and because of that, he as a natural center in the modern era of basketball was forced to play the 4 and get less minutes because he didn't fit with the much better Gobert. But now in New Orleans, I think he can go back to his old 16 and 10 with good defense playing center for them. 75 is Derek's teammate, JJ Redick, one of the best shooters in the NBA. He will definitely be a crunch for the Pelicans' limited space offense. 74, Joe Ingles is a really weird player, not just because he looks like he has no business in the NBA, but also because his game is just not all that common. He isn't a great ball handler, but he's still a good playmaker, getting almost 6 assists a game. He is an okay defensive player, great shooter, and capable shot creator at times, especially when guarded by Paul George. PJ Tucker comes in at 73. One of the most underrated players in the NBA in my opinion. He is a lethal shooter out of the corner and a really good versatile defender. He is also a good rebounder for his size, and he's a player that any team should want to have. Number 72 is Brook Lopez, who I was conflicted on where to place him. His shooting at his size is very rare, but outside of that, he is an average defender who can be a liability on a switch, and he is a bad rebounder, but that spacing is valuable, so he could be higher on my list depending what time you ask me. Number 71, Marc Gasol will probably be another controversial placement. It was something that was mentioned a lot when I posted my list on Twitter, but I personally feel that Gasol is pretty much washed offensively, and defensively he can be a problem on the switch. As of now, Gasol seems like a good post defender, alright rim protector, and a sometimes adequate floor spacer. His passing is still okay, but he can't score in the post anymore, can't shoot all that much in the face-up, and his pick and pop game is weaker than it has been in the last couple of years. Number 70 is Paul Millsap. Paul is a good defender, has a high basketball IQ, he can score in the post from time to time, good ball handler, had his first league average shooting season from 3, and he's a pretty good playmaker for a 4. At 69, don't laugh, Jaylen Brown. I made a whole video on why the Celtics should trade him in the upcoming season, but he is a good defender, okay shooter, and really athletic, but everything else needs a good amount of work. Hopefully it will improve, but as of now, Brown is unfortunately number 69. Otto Porter Jr. at 68 is one of the best shooters in the NBA. Had a great defensive rating last year, and in Chicago, he massively boosted their win percentage when he went there, averaged a career high in points, averaging 17.5 points in 15 games on 48, 49, 90 shooting splits. Now that's 15 games and obviously some inflated shooting numbers, but I think that shows how good of a fit Otto is in Chicago. He is one of the better glue guys in the NBA. Number 67 is Gary Harris. He had a bit of a down year last season, but to be fair to him, he was injured, but he averaged a very efficient 17 the year before, so I think fully healthy he can be one of the best 3-and-D guys in the NBA. And for the last guy of part 1, Montrezl Harrell. Harrell is one of the best scoring and specifically pick and roll big men in the NBA. He averaged 16 and 7 last year on 62% shooting, and he was in contention for 6th man of the year. Unfortunately bested by his teammate Lou Williams. He isn't the defender that some people seem to think he is. He isn't awful, but he isn't like good as some people seem to believe for some reason. Number 65 is Eric Gordon, one of the best 3-point shooters and 6th men in the NBA. He put up 20 points per game in the playoffs against the Warriors as well. He is a really good scorer off of the bench. He had a bit of a down season last year, but he came around in the playoffs, so I will give him a benefit of the doubt. Number 64 is Clint Capella, who did quite the opposite of Gordon. He had a fantastic regular season, but stunk it up in the playoffs, going from 17 and 13 13 on 65% shooting to 10 and 10 on 56% shooting. So he would be higher if he didn't suck in the playoffs. Great rebounder, great pick and roll player. Hopefully he can actually do that in the playoffs this year for the Rockets. Number 63 is Domantas Sabonis, who is a very interesting player. He is a very traditional big man that has a less traditional frame and a much less traditional ball handling ability, but he is a great rebounder, good finisher, and post player. He can hit a mid-range shot, and he is solid defensively. Brandon Ingram comes in at 62. He had a really solid finish to last season after a rough start. He averaged 18 on 50% shooting for the year, and in the last 6 games, he really hit his stride, averaging 28 points on 57% shooting from the field and 53% from 3. That was obviously just 6 games, but I feel that it was a sign of him taking the next step as a scorer. I don't think he'll be a good fit next to Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball in New Orleans, but I do think he'll have a good year. At number 61, we have Steven Adams, someone who I believe is a sleeper for most improved player. He is a great pick and roll man, rebounder, and above average defensively, and I believe with Russ and PG no longer in OKC, the Thunder will look for him for offense more than they ever had. He averaged 14 and 10 last season. I expect more like 17 and 13 this season. Number 60 is my boy Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen had a good, albeit not great, sophomore season considering what his expectations were. Granted, he did deal with some injury problems, but he still got a solid 19 and 9 on the year. He's one of the best stretch bigs in the game. He has shown flashes as a ball handler. He has a really weird drag step signature move that will be the equivalent of what the one-legged fadeaway was for Dirk. Trust me, I'm not biased at all on that. Number 59 is Jason Tatum. He also had a solid but not great sophomore season for what his expectations were. He averaged 16 and 6 on 45, 37, 86 shooting splits. I think this year, with less ego and expectations surrounding this Celtics team, he will put up 20 plus a game. He has a fluid offensive game, and outside of scoring, his all-around game outside of passing is pretty damn solid. At number 58, we have Jusuf Nurkic, one of the players in the NBA that I probably think the least about. Not that I think less of Nurkic, I just don't think about him. He's a really solid all-around center. Getting him for Mason Plumlee seemed like a pointless move at first, but it turned out to be genius. So, good for Portland, I guess. Number 57 is Julius Randle. He broke out in New Orleans this year, but to be a little critical, someone had to shoot the ball. But still, he did shoot the ball well. He put up 21 and 9 with New Orleans, and his numbers look even more impressive when you look at his per 36 stats, where Randle averages go up to 25 and 10. I expect him to put up numbers closer to his per 36 in New York, but I also think that those will be inflated numbers, so that's why he's as low as he is. At 56, we have Malcolm Brogdon, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. I have no idea why the Bucks let him go. Last year, he averaged 15 points on 50, 40, 90, and in Indiana this year, I expect him to get closer to 20 a game. He is also a good distributor and defender. 55 is John Collins, who had a significant jump in his second season. Averaging 20 and 10 on 59% shooting, he is the perfect pick and roll player with Trae Young, and he is also a good post scorer with a developing jump shot. His mid-range game is there, he just needs to become more comfortable behind the three-point line. At 54, we have Kevin Love, and as you can probably tell from his placement, I do not think highly of Kevin Love. I thought after LeBron left that he would break out back to, or at least nearly, Minnesota K-Love. But he did not do that. He actually had the worst season of his career. I understand there were injury problems, but I think he showed that LeBron did not hold him back, and in fact, he actually declined pretty significantly in Cleveland. He's a solid 19 and 9 on decent shooting splits, and that's about it. 53 is Bojan Bogdanovic, who had the best year of his career last season, averaging 18 points a game in Victor Oladipo's absence, and he was also one of the better shooters in the NBA, shooting 43% on 5 attempts. His spacing and sometimes capable shot creation should work really well in Utah this year with a bunch of guys who can set him up. At 52, we have Jaren Jackson Jr., who is probably the most underrated player in the NBA in my opinion. Not only does Jaren have insane potential, which he does, he is also a damn good player right now. He put up 19 a game per 36 last year, and this year in a bigger role, I think he can average about that. while also being already one of the probably 10 best defensive players in the league. 51 is Karis LeVert, who pretty much had the definition of an up and down season last year. He started the season averaging 24-4 on 50% shooting, then he had an injury that looked significantly worse than it actually was, and he closed out the season averaging 11 points on 39% shooting. But Karis is a capable shot creator for himself and others, alright shooter, he has a killer floater game, and hopefully he looks more like he did at the start of the season this season. At 50, we have Aaron Gordon. AG is a really good defensive player with some offensive chop. As a 4, he is a capable shooter, but capable is about the nicest thing that you can say for his shooting. He is also a really good ball handler, good passer for a 4, and an alright enough rebounder. For 49, Trae Young started off his rookie year proving all of his doubters, including me, completely right. But then something happened, and suddenly this dude was not only making Luka sweat a little bit in the Rookie of the Year race, but he was also looking like one of the better players in the NBA, averaging 25 and 9 for the last 20 games of the year. He is an elite shooter and possibly an even more elite passer. At 48, we have Robert Covington. When I posted my list on Twitter, his name was the one that was brought up the most, so it's obviously controversial. I just happen to value defense and shooting a fuck ton, and Rocco is great at both of those things. When he was traded to Minnesota, in the 22 games that he played for them, they won 9 of those games, which was pretty much the closest that team got to 500 over any stretch. He also improved their defense significantly. He's a guy that's not going to stand out too much on the stat sheet. He's up with the top of the league in terms of impact. Sixth man extraordinaire Lou Williams comes in at 47. Lou is pretty much the definition of a pure scorer. When you put him in the game, he gets buckets and not much else, which is not a knock against him. He knows his role and plays it extraordinarily well. He averaged 20 a game this year. I think it'll be more like 16 a game with Kawhi and PG now in Los Angeles, but still a phenomenal bench score. Lou's former teammate Danilo Gallinari comes in at 46. He was arguably the Clippers' best player for many stretches last season, and I don't think people are aware of just how good Gallinari is. I think Tobias Harris, Montrezl Harrell, and Lou got most of the credit for this team's offense, but Gallo was putting up 20 a game on 46, 43, 90 shooting splits. He is one of the best off-ball scorers in the game, with some ability to create off of the dribble and in the post. Buddy Hield comes in at 45. When I did part 1 of this, when I put Joe Harris where he was, I said that he was 4th in shooting in the NBA, only behind 3 different players, and those players were the Splash Brothers and then Buddy Buckets. Hield shot 43% from 3 on 8 attempts a game. I think Curry's insane shooting has led that to look less impressive than it actually is. Of the players to shoot 7 or more threes a game, Buddy comes in 2nd in percentage behind Curry, only behind by 1%, and then he is 2% over Clay and at least 4% above everyone else. Truly an elite shooter, and not just off of the catch. He took many of those threes off of the dribble, and many of them were contested. He's also a good scorer overall as a ball handler and finisher, getting him to 20 points a game. At 44, we have Jamal Murray. I had a huge internal as well as Twitter debate as to who was better between Murray and Buddy Hield, so I just decided to put them next to each other because I don't fucking know. Murray is the better ball handler and passer and overall shot creator, but Buddy is a far superior shooter and he is a decent bit more efficient. But Murray has actually had playoff experience and good experience at that, so that's why I put him 1 spot ahead. 43 is Nikola Vucevic, who has a real chance to drop if last season was a fluke, which I think is a real possibility. He might have just been trying extra hard for that paycheck. If that was the motivation for him, then good for him, he accomplished his goal. He is a solid stretch big who is also a post threat, okay rebounder, and passable defender. At 42, we have Miles Turner, a very different center from Vooch. Miles is a phenomenal shot blocker, really athletic and switchy. He is really reliable as a stretch big, but his offensive game doesn't go outside of that, and the occasional pick and roll or dump off as well. I've waited for a while for him to take the next step offensively. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, but he is going to be a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year candidate, so I can't really complain. At 41, we have my boy Zach LaVine, certified bucket getter and also a monstrosity in 2K20. Seriously, 2K? what the fuck is this? He averaged 24 a game last year, and you can't even give him a decent looking face scan. He got good shooting splits. He also showed signs of a growing playmaking ability, averaging 4.5 assists, but he is one of the worst defensive, if not the worst defensive player in the league, and he doesn't have any physical excuses there. He has the body type and the athleticism to be an elite defender, and yet he is poo-poo. At 40, we have Tobias Harris. Yes, unfortunately the Sixers gave the 40th best player in the NBA a max contract, but that is no knock against the better but less interesting half of Toby and Bobby. Tobias is like if Prime Melo was focused on taking only exclusively good shots. Tobias is a really smart scorer. Rarely does he take a shot that he shouldn't have. Rarely does he make a questionable decision. He is a reliable 18 to 20 points a game. 39 is Andre Drummond. Depending on who you ask, Drummond could be top 20 or barely top 80. For me, he lands about in the middle. He is the best rebounder in the NBA, already on track to be one of the greatest rebounders ever. He averaged 16 rebounds a game, 5 of those being offensive over the last 2 years. He is also a solid offensive player within his role. Kyle Lowry comes in at 38, another player that is all over the place in people's rankings, and he kind of is for me as well. Some days I feel like Lowry sucks, and some days I feel like he's incredibly underappreciated. He's a really good pick and roll player, good albeit inconsistent shooter, and he averaged a career best 8.7 assists a game last season. He is an elite defender, but because of his consistency problems, he changes all the time for me. I could have him as low as 60 depending on the day. De'Aaron Fox is number 37. He made the most significant jump of anyone of the 2017 draft class. He went from 10 points and like 4 assists to 17 and 7 on good shooting splits. Not only did he bump up his production, but he also went from bad shooter to average. He shot 37% from 3, and he was a really solid player in the mid-range. Also a great defender. 36 is DeMar DeRozan, who I do not think highly of. As I said with Robert Covington, I really value defense and shooting, and DeMar has neither of those. And while yes, he did just have a very good season, I just don't think that he can bring teams success as a first option, and he doesn't really work as a second option because he can't shoot. So yeah, really not high on DeMar. Chris Middleton at 35 might not have the one-on-one scoring ability of DeRozan, but because of his shooting and defense, I put him ahead of him. He did fall apart in the second round of the playoffs, something that he does not get enough shit for, but I do think that that team as a whole shit the bed, so I guess I'll give him a pass. At 34, we have Pascal Siakam. He had a breakout season last year, good ball handler, really good defender, underrated in fact on that side, and his shooting has come around. This year in Toronto, we will get to see what he can do as a first option. Should be interesting to see how he fares. And for the last guy of part 2, Draymond Green. Once again, probably a controversial placement, and just like Lowry and Drummond, he is also all over the place in people's lists. Overall, I feel Draymond's impact outside of the box score is bar none. He is one of the smartest and best defensive players in the league, but that can only take you so far. I can't confidently rank him over guys who can have that level of impact outside of the box score while also having a way better looking box score. At 32, we have D'Angelo Russell, who made his first All-Star appearance last season. Averaging 22 and 7 on alright shooting splits, he is a really solid scorer with a great feel for the game. Unfortunately, he really struggles as a finisher, and because of that, he avoids contact a lot, and as a result, he only averages 2.5 free throws a game, which makes his offensive game fairly limited. For him to take the next step as a scorer, he needs to become more aggressive going to the basket. At 31, we have Devin Booker, one of the best pure scorers in the league. He averaged 26 on 47% shooting, but he did have a down year as a three-point shooter, only shooting 32%. He showed off some playmaking this year, playing a lot of point guard, resulting in 7 assists a game. Those were inflated assist numbers, but I think it's a sign that Booker can be a lead ball handler. He hasn't won shit yet, and he is a terrible defender, but I think with the proper situation around him, Devin Booker could be a top 15 player in the league. At 30, we have Kristaps Porzingis. There is a good chance he is higher on this list 20 games into the season for me. It depends on if Kristaps takes a jump from the season he had before injury, or if he is about the same. I'm expecting about the same, but there's a chance that being out for a year gave him a lot of time to improve his game. Also, I think Rick Carlisle will have a way more creative offensive game plan than Derek Fisher, whose game plan basically broke down to big guy with jump shot, shoot fadeaway. 29 is Donovan Mitchell, another guy that could easily move up for me. He is a really good offensive player, putting up 24 a game along with 4 assists. The only real flaw with Mitchell's offensive game wasn't even really his fault. In Utah, he had no damn spacing. Joe Ingles was the only good floor spacer on the team, shooting 39% from 3 on 6 attempts a game. But this year, they have Bogdanovic, who will be a good shooter, and Ricky Rubio was replaced by the next guy up on this list, who is both a good shooter and can still play make like Rubio without his defender helping off of him. So obviously, number 28 is Mike Conley. Mike is a solid scorer, averaging 21 a game last year and 2 years before that, and he does it on solid efficiency while getting you around 6 assists a game and playing really good defense. He will be a great fit in Utah, and I look forward to seeing what he can do for them down the line. At 27, we have Luka Doncic. Luka had the best rookie season that I have personally ever seen. There have obviously been better rookie seasons, but I am 19 years old. I don't know why everyone thinks I'm fucking 30. Luka Doncic averaged 21, 8, and 6 as a rookie. He was less than desirable efficiency-wise, but still a phenomenal rookie season, and he is already a top 30 NBA player because of it. I don't expect Luka's averages to be a whole lot better this year with Kristaps now there, but I think the efficiency going way up is on the table with another offensive option that the defense has to focus on. At 26, Chris Paul. He was a tough one to place. He had the worst year of his career since maybe his rookie season last season, but CP3 is still a very good shooter, especially in the mid-range, still has great vision, that doesn't go away, and he is still solid defensively. His numbers will probably be inflated a bit in OKC this year, assuming he stays there, which is a probably safe assumption. He is still one of the best point guards in the league. 25 is Drew Holiday. Holiday really broke out in the playoff series versus the Blazers 2 years ago. He averaged 21 and 8 on 46% shooting last season, and his offensive game isn't even the best thing about Holiday. Drew is one of the best defensive guards in the league. I'm interested to see what his future is in New Orleans, because he doesn't really fit with the rest of the team, but he's also really good and not really trade-worthy. I don't know. At 24, we have CJ McCollum. He really stepped up for the Blazers in the playoffs this year. After the OKC series, he actually played better than Damian Lillard in the last 2 rounds. I think he can take another step as a scorer after a really good playoffs. At 23, we have Al Horford. If you looked up the word intangibles in the dictionary, there would be a photo of Al Horford next to it. One of the best defensive bigs in the game, does not make many mistakes on offense, doesn't really make any mistakes, period. I'm curious what he will be like as a power forward this year. He has always been a center, and I'd argue he's a little too slow-footed to play power forward in 2019, but he can stretch the floor, his passing should complement Embiid's game, and he won't be a total liability on the boards anymore because he's starting next to 3 6'10 plus players. Seriously, this team is fucking tall as hell. 22 is Al Horford's teammate Ben Simmons. Ben gets way too much shit for not being able to shoot. Outside of shooting, he's pretty much flawless as a player. Averaging 17 points a game with no jumper as a perimeter player is not an easy feat, and with Jimmy Butler no longer in Philly, Ben can finally be on ball all the time. I really didn't like that move for the Sixers because any scenario where Ben Simmons is playing off ball is a bad scenario, but with Butler gone, his playmaking should be on full display. 21 is Bradley Beal. I don't have a lot to say for Beal other than Washington, please free this man. He doesn't deserve this hellscape. 20 is Victor Oladipo. He's only this high because I expect him to be like what he was in his first year in Indiana. It's also worth mentioning that I am not taking guys down any points for only playing like 20 games this season. Oladipo is a really good scorer, solid playmaker, and a really good defender. Hopefully he can lead the Pacers into a deep playoff run because I kind of predicted that and looked stupid if they didn't. At 19, we have LaMarcus Aldridge. One of the best scoring fours in the league, has a lethal mid-range game. He's also a good rebounder. That's about all I had to say about him. I also played similar to him when I play basketball in real life, so there's that. At 18, Kemba Walker. He looks to finally get a spotlight on him in Boston this year. He is a really good scorer, solid playmaking, and I think he will just fit way better on this team than Kyrie Irving did. 17 is Klay Thompson, the second best shooter in the NBA and one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. This guy gets disrespected way too much. He is one of the best scorers in the league. I don't give a shit if he isn't creating most of his offense. If you can score 60 points in 3 quarters, you are a great offensive player. I don't give a fuck how you score 60. If you can do it, you are a great scorer. Does he benefit from playing next to Curry? Yeah, but so what? His level of shooting is good for 20 plus a game on any team in the league. That just happens to be more elevated in Golden State. All right, I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this one, but at number 16, Russell Westbrook. Russ had the worst scoring average that he's had in 5 years on the worst shooting that he's had in 4 years. One of the worst shooters in the league, least efficient scorers, Russ at this point is a good not great scorer with some great playmaking and rebounding, still a very good player but no longer a superstar in my eyes. The triple doubles don't do anything for me personally. He isn't nearly as good as his averages, and last year his averages weren't even that insane. Also, I don't think he contributes to winning all that much. He might contribute a little bit on a smaller scale, but not on the big stage. His game has too many flaws for me to put him any higher than 16. At 15, we have Blake Griffin, who just had the best year of his career. He averaged 24 a game, shooting 36% from 3 on 7 attempts. Holy shit, I didn't realize he shot that many threes. Damn, Blake. He also averaged 5 assists. His rebounds weren't high, but he was playing next to a guy who averages 16 a game, so I think you can give him a little bit of a pass. Really good year from Blake, and really cool to see him change his game as much as he did. He's basically just a really big small forward at this point. At 14, we have Rudy Gobert. This one is probably going to get some flack as well, but defensively, there is really no one who has more impact than Rudy Gobert. He is one of the best rim protectors, averaging over 2 blocks a game, and with his size and length, the paint is essentially shut down when he is on the court. He sometimes struggles when on the perimeter, but I think that gets blown way out of proportions, and offensively, his game might be simple, but he gets 16 a game on 67% shooting, which is damn impressive. He also grabs 4 offensive rebounds a game, and 13 rebounds overall, which is really damn helpful, so 16, 13, and 2 with some of the best defense in the league gets the number 14 spot for me. 13 is Jimmy Butler. His numbers were a little bit down this year with a reduced role in Philly, but that should not be a problem in Miami. My former favorite player in the league, Butler is a great defender, not quite as good as he used to be since becoming a really more offensively focused player, but still really good. He is great at creating in the pick and roll, one of the best slashers in the NBA. He is a really good mid-range shooter, about average from 3, and also a good playmaker. His numbers should look more like what they did in Chicago in Miami this year as the number 1 option. At 12, we have Kyrie Irving. His off-the-court stuff makes him look pretty rough at the moment. He had a great statistical season with Boston, but he was a toxic presence in the locker room. He fell apart in the playoffs, and overall, he left last season looking very questionable. But last year, he averaged a career high in assists at 7 a game, averaged 24 points a game on nearly 50-40-90, so he's still one of the best offensive players in the league. Hopefully, he doesn't tarnish his image any more than it already is in Brooklyn. And speaking of great offensive players, coming in at 11 is Karl Anthony Towns, who has potential to be maybe even the greatest offensive center ever. In the post, off the dribble, in the pick and roll, from mid-range, in the face-up, from 3, Karl is lethal from anywhere on the court, and he can score in pretty much any way you ask him. He is also a great rebounder, grabbing 13 a game, 3.5 of those being offensive. His defense is bad, but getting better, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being the scoring leader next season. Now we are getting into the top 10, and starting us off at 10, we have Paul George. Paul had an insane season last year, averaging 28, 8, and 4, shooting 39% from 3 on 10 attempts a game while playing elite defense, so elite that he was in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. I expect those numbers to drop to his usual 23 or so points a game next to Kawhi this year, but he's still a fantastic defender and shooter and scorer. I pity whatever NBA offense has to go against George and Kawhi on the perimeter. Next, we have Damian Lillard at 9. He no doubt moved up a few spots for me and a lot of people after his playoff series versus OKC. Some people may view that as overrating him based off of one series, but come on, man. If you watch that series, and if you didn't, what the hell's wrong with you? But if you watch that series, Dame legitimately looked like the best player in the league for those 5 games. He also got the Blazers to the conference finals. They lost in 4, but still he did get them there. I feel like that series against OKC didn't make people overrate Dame, as some would say. I think it made them stop underrating him, myself included. That series was basically Dame saying, hey, I'm fucking good. You better appreciate it. And I do. At number 8, we have my 4th favorite player in the NBA that's not a Chicago Bull, Joel Embiid. He put up an insane 27 and 13 in the regular season. He is a great defender and an underrated passer, getting 4 assists a game last season, but the dude has way too many health issues, and he had more issues in the playoffs. So it's harder to rank him ahead of the guy that's coming up next. And speaking of that, at number 7, we have Nikola Jokic. Embiid versus Jokic has been a long debate that started since the beginning of last season, and it's a debate that I can never come to a concise answer on. He averaged 20, 11, and 7. Down the line, he could become the first player in the modern era to average a legitimate triple-double, shots fired, and his impact offensively is just so significant that I can't put him under Embiid. Honestly, just consider them tied for me because I really don't know. Jokic is an average defender, had a down year from 3, but he can definitely hit them. I don't know. All I know is the Nuggets were really good last year, and most of that was because of Jokic. At 6, Anthony Davis. Some people have been underrating him lately because he didn't play much last year, and also because he hasn't won shit in New Orleans, but first of all, he didn't get much of a chance to win in New Orleans. And second, this guy over the last 3 years has averaged 27, 12, and 2.5 blocks. He is probably the best pick and roll big man in the game. Scratch that. He's definitely the best pick and roll man in the NBA. He's a phenomenal defensive player. I think he'll be even better on that side in LA now that he's not the only guy that can score on his team. Now, here we are in the top 5. And starting us off at 5, we have James Harden. Harden is an unbelievable player. One of the best shooters in the league, probably the second best ball handler and the best ISO scorer in the NBA. He can generate bucket after bucket all day. He averaged an insane 36 points a game this year, as well as 7 rebounds and 8 assists. He shot 37% from 3 on fucking 13 attempts a game. This dude is ridiculous on offense. Unfortunately though, this comes with a but. While Harden is one of the best offensive players the NBA has ever seen, his defense is still not great. He's not the meme level defender that he used to be, but he's still not good. And more importantly, he consistently underperforms in the playoffs, whereas everyone except for 1, maybe 2 of the guys ahead of him always either elevate themselves or at least are on par with their regular season in the playoffs. At 4, we have LeBron James. Blasphemous to some of you, I'm sure. But to me, until he proves otherwise after the season he had last year, I can't put him over any of the guys that I have ahead of him. I understand the injuries were a factor, but LeBron James did not look like the undisputed best player in the league, LeBron James, last season. His defense isn't as bad as the cherry-picked videos on Twitter would have you believe, but he still uses minimal effort on that side. He also has a tendency to take lazier shots than he ever has, just chucking up threes instead of going inside. I don't know, man. Last year was weird for LeBron. There's a very real shot that he'll be higher on this list than he was for me previously, depending on how this upcoming season goes with a better team and hopefully less injuries, but as of now, I can't put him ahead of the 3 guys that are ahead of him. Number 3 is my second favorite non-Bulls player in the league, Stephen Curry. I really cannot stand the way that people disrespect Steph. 3 years ago, he put up 30 points a game on 50, 45, 90 shooting splits. He is one of the greatest offensive players to ever live. You already know about his shooting, but the gravity that he brings as well makes him one of the best teammates of all time in my opinion. He makes the game so much easier for his teammates. And please don't give me that he never won Finals MVP bullshit. He should have won it back in 2015 for starters, and for the last 2 rings that he has won, he put up great numbers. Kevin Durant's numbers were just better, and part of the reason that KD's numbers would be so good is the gravity that Steph brings onto the court. I am really just tired of people disrespecting him. In the part 1 of this top 100 list, some guy posted his top 15 list in the comments and put Stephen Curry at 12th. Yeah. Fuck out of here. Number 2 is Giannis. He could move down 3 spots for me depending on what time you ask me. I understand he underperformed versus the Raptors, but I really blame most of that on Mike Budenholzer. The Raptors built a defense that essentially put a wall in front of the rim, and Mike's solution to that was, well, let's just have Giannis isolate. That'll work. Let's have him run directly into that wall and hope for the best. But outside of that series, Giannis is one of the best defenders in the league, which is why he was in the Defensive Player of the Year race with Paul George and Rudy Gobert. He is both a shot blocker, averaging 1.5 blocks a game last year, and a phenomenal perimeter defender. He is probably the best version of he can defend all 5 positions ever. Offensively, he is a freight train. He needs to be used way more in the pick and roll and in the post, not used as an ISO player, bud. Anyways, that's Giannis. And finally at number 1, we have Kawhi Leonard. The playoff run that Kawhi just had is the second best that I have ever seen in my life, coming only second to LeBron the year prior. He averaged 39 and 4 in the playoffs this year, hit a fucking Game 7 buzzer beater for the first time in history, which resulted in him showing emotion on the court for the first time in history. He did disappear at times a bit in the finals, but overall the dude was a great scorer while also being the best wing defender in the league. I feel people don't fully appreciate how good of a scorer Kawhi Leonard is. The guy averaged 26 a game this year and 30 in the playoffs. He's one of the best isolation scorers in the league, a fantastic shooter, fantastic at driving to the basket or pulling up in the mid-range. He's great in the post. His offensive game is amazing, outside of passing. So that's my top 100 players in the league list. I look forward to all of these guys completely contradicting all of my points and making me look like an idiot and having you all call me a clown in the comment section. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.